Okay, basically, what I'm making this video for is because here is a very long thread that has been going on, okay? In reference to, you know, I don't remember exactly what it was in reference to. I believe it was when the day begins, or Scott may have made some statement about that. But as you can see, there's 337 comments. It's been going on it's a very lengthy discussion, and we have been discussing, it's been a very heated discussion, I'll admit. And we have been contending for the fact that, you know, the truth of the situation is that the day begins at sunset, and Scott and his crew, you know, his disciples, have been basically, you know, contending against that, and then accusing us of being children of the darkness and so on and so forth. So here it was a reference to, this question was addressed to me by a man named Brendan, which I had answered prior to this in reference to Matthew 28:1. Now, and then this was his response to my answer to the question. So, you know, let's see. This was his response in reference, you know, quoting from Thayer's and so on and so forth. So I actually went and did a little bit of digging deep, and I found that what he's trying to say is not true, and I made this lengthy response, which I will place in this video, completely and utterly refuting the idea that the day begins at sunrise, okay? And because of that, now I will admit, Scott had put please further no further posting, but as you can see, David Soizia was allowed to post. And all I was doing was I was posting a response to something that had been previously already addressed to me up here that I haven't had a chance to respond to because I was working last night when this was posted. So this is the first chance I've had to respond to it. And so I typed out this lengthy response, and as you can see, I have a reply there for Scott, because I'm not happy with what's going on. But he says, I know what you think you found, but you haven't. I used to teach it 5 years ago. No, that's not what it is. You see, this right here completely refutes what they have to say, and he doesn't want people to see the truth. I'm warning you right now, if you follow Scot Dryer, you better be careful, because he's very deceived. Okay? He's deceived on many things. It probably comes from his haughty, prideful attitude, and I realize there's people out there that'll say, oh, Scott's a nice guy, man, I know, and I don't doubt that, but you know what, there's a lot of people that would probably say the same thing about the Pope. I'm sure the Pope, you know, look at Pope Benedict that's stepping down, they say he's real nice, he's very humble, he does this, that, and the other, but really when it comes down to it, what is he teaching you? And that's exactly the same case with Scott. Okay, I've made my mind up about Scott. I think Scott, you know, there was a man that had said it earlier in these postings that basically Scott comes out, and he was Terry Davidson here had said that Scott comes out and makes these horrendous, ridiculous statements which are just for shock value. Is to put it in Terry's words, they're just for shock value, no matter how moronic they are, and it's for the purpose of creating more disciples. Because you know, Scott had mentioned up there, you know, and I mentioned that I think, well, this would make a lot of sense if, you know, if the purpose was for you know, if he makes his money, if he makes his living off of his ministry, if he doesn't have a job, okay? And he did admit, he said that him and his wife do odd jobs or whatever, and from what little bit of money they have from their ministry, you know, they make ends meet or whatever, and so on and so forth. Well, I mean, I don't know Scott's situation. I see him post about, you know, owning land and this, that, and the other. Okay, I work for a living. I don't own land. So, you know, like I said, though, I don't know what that situation is. I don't know if he inherited that land from somewhere or something like that or whatever. But the point is, if you're living every day and you're able to pay your bills and you're able to buy land and all these supplies for all this preparation that he's doing, off of ministry, then I can see why you would need to make sure, because you see, there's a lot of people that are beginning to realize this Assad fairy tale. If you know Scott, you know that he's hooked on this idea that Bashar al-Assad of Syria is in fact the the quote-unquote Antichrist, and he doesn't even realize that he's caught up in Jesuit theology. I'm not talking about the idea that Assad is the Antichrist comes from the Jesuits. I'm just talking about the whole futurist idea. You have preterism, historicism, and futurism, and Scott is caught up in futurism, which has been given to you by the Jesuit Society of the Catholic Church. But anyways, what I'm getting at is I'm aggravated right now because, as you can see, Scott wants to, which I will, like I said, I'll put in the comments made by, matter of fact, I'll put in the comments in this video made by Brendan, the first comment, what I replied to it, this reply, and then my final reply, so you can make a decision for yourself and see, because, and this is after Scott had already, they wonder why I come in here and I get a little aggravated and frustrated, okay? Because when I made my reply to Brandon, yeah, I may have come off, and Brandon pointed this out. He said that my response to him was a little condescending. He said, what did he say? He says, although I appreciate your condescension, I simply cannot agree with your definitions, and so on and so forth. Because I do come off, these people do frustrate me a little bit, and I know we're supposed to be kind and gentle and long-suffering towards all people, but you can only get called names so much. You can only be told that you're a child of the darkness because you don't follow Scott's, because you're not Scott's disciple and you don't follow his calendar or whatever. You know what I mean? You can only get called that stuff. And I guess I should rejoice in it, because if they call the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call his servants, right? So, and Tiffany, a sister, she became very aggravated and got attacked by Scott's eunuchs. And really, when it comes down to it, there is a whole aspect, and Tiffany pointed it out. If you understand anything about the spirit of Jezebel, it has nothing to do with gender, okay? There's many men who operate in the spirit of Jezebel too. Jezebel in the scripture is a picture of a false anointing, okay? It's a false, like in Revelation we're told, you suffereth that woman that calleth herself Jezebel, or I'm sorry, that you suffereth that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess. Okay, so she seems to act as a prophet and so on and so forth, but really it's a counterfeit anointing, and some of the characteristics of that counterfeit anointing, I'm not going to really go into that too deep here, but I can tell you some of the characteristics of that counterfeit anointing is speaking cryptically, not being able to be understood. Pride, arrogance, haughtiness. Okay, these are all things that I have seen many people on Scott's posts accuse him of being, and quite frankly, I have spiritual discernment. Tiffany has spiritual discernment. You can't tell me. Okay, am I saying he's on his way to hell? Am I saying he's a child of the devil or whatever? No, that's not necessarily what I'm saying, because I do realize that when people are unaware, they may have an intention to want to do good or to maybe want to serve or something like that, but until they get resolved of some of their issues and so on and so forth, there is a capability to operate in that spirit, and I do believe that's the spirit that Scott operates in. And as you can see here, he is totally down. He's wanting to suppress the truth, and he says, I know what you think you have found, but you haven't. So obviously he either knows this information or he read through and he didn't, see, and this is also what the spirit of Jezebel hates, okay? It hates opposition from a true teacher, prophet, messenger, whatever, okay? Jezebel hated Elijah. You see what I'm saying? Elijah was a true worker of the Father. He was a true servant of the Father, and basically he opposed Jezebel's prophets, and in essence opposed Jezebel by doing so. And that's exactly what has been going on in this post. Okay, and like I said, this isn't a derogatory term to refer to gender. You know, I'm not saying Scott is a sissy or a girl or anything like that. I'm just saying Jezebel, she is a picture in the scriptures of a false anointing, a false prophet. Okay, and that's exactly what you will see. You will see come to pass in reference to whether or not Scott is working for the kingdom or against it for the time being. And by what I mean by that is in his leading people astray, preaching against the truth, calling those people who are preaching the truth. You know, there's been some heated things said in this post and so on and so forth, but I don't recall me or any of the other people in here that are contending against this, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall me or any of the people in here that are contending against this idea that the day begins at sunrise, which, by the way, from what I found, is a Roman idea. I don't recall us telling these other people that they're children of the darkness, or that, you know, or that they're children of the... Because in essence, if you're telling somebody that they're a child of the darkness, you're telling them they're a child of the wicked one. And so it's just, you know, all the name calling and everything, yeah, it gets a little frustrating, and so I do come off a little harsh sometimes in that frustration. But this, I think, is totally crossing the line. I think this is totally uncalled for, to suppress the truth right here. If anything, let the people read it for themselves. And like I said, I'm going to post it so you can read it. I'm going to post it at the end of this video. But other than that, I would just like to once again thank you for your time, and I just wanted to point this out to everybody. Thank you.